Get that fucking trash out of your life. You have legacies to build. We grew that business from 3.4 million to 17.1. Horsepower, not horse shit. You want to be the parent that's an ally. They don't need another fucking friend. Not everybody's cup of whiskey. Toughest advice for the toughest businessmen. Be relentless. One of my favorite businessmen and authors is the late, great Zell. And the book that I love was called Am I Being Too Subtle? Just one of my favorite all-time books about a billionaire American entrepreneur talking straight, blunt talk, the unvarnished truth. And we lost Sam a few months ago. What a maverick. What a entrepreneurial renegade. It reminds me of the Buddy Ryan quote. Buddy Ryan, of course, the famous, infamous NFL head coach, assistant coach. I remember writing this down when I was reading a Sports Illustrated article a few years ago. And the quote is from Buddy. He was telling his two sons, do your job right and you won't have to kiss anybody's ass. I like that quote. I like that quote. Do your job right and you won't have to kiss anybody's ass. You'll be a badass champion, not a 99% bootlicker. Which brings me to one of my all-time favorite stories. I had forgotten this story for some reason, and it came to me a few days ago when I was sitting on the boat reading. And I wrote it down and I said to myself, I have got to tell this to the guys. My dad, when I was 14 years old, I was just about to start my first year of high school, grade 9. And I came up with this entrepreneurial idea to run a hockey school, to run a summer hockey camp in late August where I would get 50 players on the ice, and I would run a week-long camp the last week of August to make a little bit of money. I was enjoying coaching at that point. These kids would be young. I'd teach them skating, I'd teach them shooting, puck handling, and we'd have a little bit of fun. And it would be in the evenings for a couple hours. As simple a hockey school or hockey camp as you could imagine. So I told my dad my latest idea. I said, Dad, I want to run a hockey school. I'm going to run it down in Smith Falls at the youth arena. I can book the ice. Here's my budget. Here's my expenses. Here's the money that I can make from this business. So my dad was always encouraging when it came to anything entrepreneurial. He said, okay, those numbers look pretty good. What else do you need? And I said, well, I'm going to need about $500 for expenses, for things like jerseys, water bottles, pucks, things like that. So my dad said to me at the time, he said, listen, he said, I'm going to teach you a different business lesson this time. Instead of me personally loaning you that money, the $500, he says, let's use the bank as if you were running a bigger company and you were having to go and ask the bank for a loan. He says, I want you to experience and learn how to deal with financial institutions. I'm 14 years old, right? It's time for me to start dealing with the bank. I had a bank account since I was probably 7 years old. So my dad sets up an appointment with his personal banker. And at the time, my dad is running McLean Insurance. He's one of their more successful clients. And we go over there and we sit down with the corporate lender. Nice gentleman. My dad knows him, polite, the whole thing. How are you, Frank? That kind of stuff. The old boys club, right? And they sit down and he asked me a few questions. Michael, what would you need the $500 for? When would you repay the loan? Very basic stuff, right? It's not a lot of money when it comes to a banking institution like RBC. So I tell them my income, I tell them my expenses, I tell them how many kids are going to be registered. It's $500, right? So he takes all the paperwork down. My dad sits in this 5-10 minute meeting, and then we shake hands and we leave. He says, I'll get back to you on the official approval. So my dad's kind of like official approval. It's $500, but nonetheless, banks, right? Banks. So we go back, and I go home and I continue to work on my new hockey school. It's going to be a green light for me. I'm going to have the cash flow I need to get started, and it's something that I'm going to do for a few years. I'll do it every August. So a day later, my dad calls me into the office. I'm over at the high school, and I always dropped into the office after school from whatever sport I was playing. I'd get a ride home with my dad at 5 o'clock, and I come in the office and he says, I need to speak to you. So I walk in, I sit down. He says, your loan wasn't approved. And I was like, it wasn't approved? He says, no. He says, the bank turned you down for your $500 loan application. So I'm like, wow, well, will you lend me the money? And it doesn't seem like a big problem for me. If the bank doesn't want to loan me the money, my dad will loan me the money. And you have to understand, my dad is an extremely calm person. Like, he's not a super emotional person like myself. I'm more like my mom than I am like my father. My dad is very cerebral. He rarely raises his voice. He's very, very easygoing. People have a lot of respect for my dad. He has a presence about him that's very, he's a leader, but he has a really unique style where people, they don't want, people that work for my dad they don't want to let him down. He has that unique leadership ability. And you see that in some great sports coaches where they're not taskmasters, they're not ass kickers. They're people who are basically the people that work for them or play for them. They never want to disappoint them, right? They never ever want to disappoint them. So that's the big thing. Out of the way, Cliffy, buddy. So that's my dad. So he's not a yeller, he's not a screamer, he's not a guy who swears, and he's just a really calm, mentally tough fella. So I said to my dad, well, can you please lend me the $500 and I'll pay it back in a few weeks. And I'll never forget it. My dad gets up from his desk and he says, fuck that. And he says, come with me. And it's 5 o'clock, right? It's like 5 to 5. And we march out the back door of the office. And we walk across the back parking lot. And we walk a few buildings down. And the bank is about a 3-minute walk away. So we walk in the front of the bank. And he walks right by reception, right by the service, and he walks into this guy's little cubicle office. And he shuts the door behind him, and I'm with him, right? I'm with him. I'm just walking there. I'm like, where the hell are we going? We walk in the bank. He walks right into this guy's office unannounced. He never even sat down. And he said, $500? He says, you don't approve $500? He says, for a kid who wants to start a business locally? And this guy is like quaking in his boots, right? He's a little pencil pusher, what my dad calls cubicle idiots, cubicle bootlickers. And I can't remember exactly what he said, but it was along the lines of, it was along the lines of, I'm going to give you one more chance. I'm going to give you one more chance to green light this, red stamp this simple application. And if you don't, I'm going to take every fucking penny I have of my millions of dollars in this bank, and I'm going to walk across the street and I'm going to deposit it in your competitor's account. 5 o'clock. This guy's putting his lunch kit away so he can go home and see his wife and kids and pretend that he didn't work that day. Like, he's sweating, he's shaking. And my dad's not sitting, he's standing. I'm gonna give you one final chance to approve this loan, to red stamp this simple procedure, this loan that doesn't amount to a row of beans, or I'm gonna take every fucking cent of my millions of dollars that I have in this bank as probably one of your top 5 customers in the entire area, and I'm gonna walk across that street and I'm gonna deposit it in your competitor's bank tonight. Literally, I thought the guy was gonna cry, right? Bootlickers are criers. Corporate bootlickers. This guy was just being an ass. He has no power in his life. He's got no influence in his life. He's what my grandfather calls a corporate bootlicker, where he's sold out. He could have done something important with his life, with his career, but instead he went into banking. Corporate banking. Sit in your office all day and crush people's dreams. Well, that's risky, Frank. We need you to co-sign the $500. My dad was like fuck. It was on principle, right? My dad could have added his signature to that and then it's a slam dunk, but my dad wouldn't. Because of his relationship with this bank, because of the fact he was one of their top, most loyal customers, he had been with the bank for like 50 years. He was one of their top commercial and personal accounts. They kissed his ass 7 days a week. Do you want to go golfing? Do you want to do this? And he never did any of it, right? So the one time he asked for them to approve a simple $500 loan for a hockey camp, that if ever anything went sideways, he'd make me pay it with my blood, sweat, and tears, trust me. There was zero risk. Zero risk. He's got millions in his accounts there. And he would make me pay back every friggin' dime. And this is back in the days where we knew our bankers, right? He knew this man, and this man knew my dad. He knew him from 50 years of integrity and principled loyalty. And for him to pull that corporate bullshit with my dad, it just took a man who's so calm, so professional, and it literally just threw gasoline on a fire. And my dad got angrier and angrier as the guy said, well, Frank, you can co-sign. And my dad on principle alone was like, I ain't going to be co-signing anything, but I am going to be closing all my accounts. So I've never seen, I was only 14, I've never seen somebody scramble like that before as that corporate guy, that bootlicker. He could barely speak, he was stuttering, he was scrambling. He was, just a second, I'll go and see the manager. I've got to, and he literally comes back into his own office, which was the size of my bathroom. And within 2 or 3 minutes, Frank, I'm so sorry about this. It's just a misunderstanding. We will approve this loan. And my dad's face is like maybe 18 inches from this guy's face. And he says to him calmly in one of those calm voices that just like, holy fuck. He says, don't ever mistake my kindness for weakness. And then he literally turns with me and goes, son, come on, let's go. In the calmest voice he ever had. And I'm just like, what the hell just happened here over the last 15 minutes? Well, what happened is I got my loan approved for my hockey school, which was an amazing success. It was just a small potato stuff. But man, did my dad that day teach me a lesson about we get what we tolerate and we get what we demand, and our standards are everything. Here's my dad, the most easy guy to get along with. You know, just if you can't get along with my dad, then you've got some problems. And here's a guy who was on a power trip, decided to trip up my dad, was probably hated his own job, hated his own life, bootlicker, working for the man, you know, counting every last day he had. 5 years to retirement, 13 days, 11 hours, one of those guys, like a union guy. And man, my dad would have none of it. And when he got turned down, there was no phone call. There was no text or email to, can we meet again? My dad grabbed me by the back of the shirt, walked out the back of McLean Insurance. We booted it across the parking lot, just like a man on a mission, in through the bank, right through reception, right through all of it, right to this bootlicker's little office, his cubicle. And he just unloads both barrels on this guy. This guy never got over that. I mean, he went home that night, he would have had to have a couple of extra scotch, if that's actually what he drank. Boy, oh boy. This corporate bank guy died like 15 years ago when I was in the insurance business, and I remember seeing the announcement in the paper and on the local radio, and it brought back this story. Because my dad never had any other problem with the bank. Of course he had no problem with the bank. He went from broke to wealthy, so of course he had no problem with the bank, right? So they loved him as long as he had money. So when I heard about this man's passing, I was just like, whoa, I remember that. I remember that guy. And wow. He saw the other side of my dad, which is like, you know, my dad would go years without losing his cool. My dad would go a decade without losing his cool or his temper. The fact he was so calm and controlled and so mentally tough was what made him an elite entrepreneur and father and husband. Because you couldn't rattle him. You can't rattle to this day, you can't rattle my dad. Well, when this guy pulled this bootlicker bullshit, when he tried to trip my dad up, or he tried to whatever you'd call that. I don't know. I've never been a bootlicker, so I don't know what a cubicle idiot does. But someone who's powerless, someone who's sold out, someone who's phoned it in, somebody who's, given up on winning. I've never been that person, so I don't know. But in this case, it took that for my dad's principles and values to come roaring out. Usually he didn't have to do this. And we never spoke of it again. We never spoke of it again until we were talking about it in Naples at the table. Like, it was like my dad had just forgotten about it. I was like, Dad, do you remember when I started that hockey school and the bank turned me down for the $500 loan? And my dad just chuckles. He's like, yeah, I remember that guy. And wow, talk about, am I being too subtle? Holy Mackinac. Just wow. Clear is kind, unclear is unkind. Our world could use a lot more of that. Our world could use a lot more Sam Zells, a lot more Frank McLean's, a lot more clear is kind, unclear is unkind. So, what did that teach me that day as a 14-year-old? I'm just a 14-year-old kid. I think I know more than I do. I think I'm better than I am. And I'm just an awkward 14-year-old kid turning into a man. And I see my hero. I don't have heroes. My mom and my dad are my heroes. I never looked to sports for a hero. My heroes were right in front of me, my mom and my dad. So when I saw my hero stand up for his principles and his values like that, just think of the impact that has on a child or a teenager. And that's what we're doing, right? As husbands, as fathers, as entrepreneurs, as community leaders. Basically, this is what we're doing, right? We're picking our fights, we're picking our battles, and we're standing up for what do we believe in, our principles and our values. And when we stay silent, we send the message that we're good with this, right? When we don't speak up for the things that happen in our schools, the things that are happening with our language, the things that are happening with our country, the way capitalism and business is being attacked, the evil rich, the greedy, the way you're being attacked. Men are being attacked, masculinity being attacked, and your silence is deafening. If you're silent, if you do the opposite of my dad, if you do the opposite of a Sam Zell, if you do your silence is deafening. It's used as, and it's, even though it may not be, it's used as agreement. You don't stand up and you don't voice your principles and your values. I'm not asking you to become some, mob freak that doesn't have a job, professional rioter or professional bought and paid for person who is always against something. We don't have time for that as entrepreneurs, but for God's sakes, we need to stand up for our values and our beliefs. You're not a professional protester. I'm not, you're not. And we don't have time for such nonsense. We're too busy building things, helping people, fixing things, creating things. We don't have time for manufactured outrage. But when it comes to our values and our principles, you as a king need to stand up. And your silence cannot be seen as agreement. And also, it's good for you to stand up. We can't let the 1% of 1% of 1% mobs. We can't allow those people to bully us, to shame us, to embarrass us, to make us feel bad about being a creator, being a builder, being a man, being an entrepreneur, being a leader. No, 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 no. Principles and values require us standing up and voicing. Maybe it's talking to somebody at a barbecue. Maybe it's something you write in your newsletter. Maybe it's something you put in an email. But right is right. Like my grandmother said, right is right. I'm not talking about political philosophies. I'm not talking about social media toxicity or trying to change the mind of a tomato can. I'm just saying right is right. Talk about principles, talk about your values with your children, talk about what's right, talk about what's wrong, talk about integrity, talk about character, punctuality, how you show up, how you speak to yourself. Take pride in your body and your mind. Take pride in your country. Take pride as an entrepreneur. Take pride as a volunteer, as a father, as a husband, as a family leader. Take pride. Be proud of your values. Be proud of your beliefs. Be proud of your dreams. Be proud of what you've accomplished. Be proud that you're the man in the arena. Be proud that without you, like they say, Atlas shrugged, you take a nap for 6 weeks and this whole thing goes to hell in a handbasket. So, Buddy was right. Do your job right and you don't have to kiss anybody's ass. Do your job right as a man, as a husband, as a father, as a businessman. Do your job right. You don't gotta kiss anybody's ass. My dad that day said, I ain't no ass kisser. Today I'm an ass kicker. Today I'm an ass kicker. Don't cross a guy from the streets whose parents abandoned him, whose parents who grew up in addiction and grew up in a toxic environment, who was abandoned at birth, who clawed his way to the top, who knew nothing but losing around him but found a way to win. Don't cross that guy or gal. Don't cross that guy or gal, bootlicker. Man, my dad, Buddy Ryan, would have smiled. He would have said, there's an ass kicker, not an ass kisser. So, that's it for today. I'm going to open the doors to my Emails Millions Mastermind here in June for a few days, and then I'm going to slam them shut again. If you missed out the first time, hey, if you missed out the first time, then woo! If you missed out the first time, then there's a chance for you to jump in the mastermind now. Go to emailmillions.coach, emailmillions.coach. I'm going to open the doors for a few days here, and you can jump in our mastermind. It's monthly, $97 for my clients and members and brothers, $147 for outsiders. Emailmillions.coach. And what you can do is you'll be joining a group of brothers. Every week I write an email for you. I show you the software to buy. I teach you all of the different copywriting skills, and I'll write 52 emails for you this year to send to your list. And I'm going to show you how to build an email list that will literally feed you and your family for the next 5 years, 10 years, 25 years, whatever. It's basically sit down and write yourself a swimming pool. You want to take a vacation, sit down and write an email. You want money for college for your children, sit down and write emails. You want to travel Europe, sit down and write some emails. You want to double your business, sit down and start writing emails. I'm going to teach you how to do it. I'm going to teach you how to literally swamp your business in leads, in referrals, in buyers that literally beg you to do business. If that's something you want, go to emailmillions.coach. and sign up today. It's coffee money. It's $3.25 a day. That's chump change, by the way. If you can't afford that, screw it on straight. That's chump change, $3.25. So it's not about the money. Email millions.coach. I'm going to keep that site up and active for a few days here so that we can add some new brothers this month. The doors are open. Take advantage of it before they're slammed shut. Email millions. How to literally make $500, $1,000, $2,000 a day sitting at your kitchen table in your boxer shorts by sending these simple plain text emails. Simple as that, and I'll show you how to do it all, soup to nuts. I've sold over $150 million in the last 19 years of products and services, and at least 90% of it has been through email, the honey that brings in the money. Email is the honey that brings in the money, and it's the eighth wonder of the marketing world. It's inexpensive. It takes 10 minutes to write an email, and you don't have to bother with Instagrunt or Facebook or Twitter or any of these boob tube, none of it. Build an email list, email it consistently, make offers. I just handed you the $1 million blueprint. It's that simple. Build a list, email it consistently, make offers. That's it, that's all. I'll show you how to do that in my Emails Millions Mastermind. You can join today. Email millions.coach. Do what I do. When you get home tonight, make sure that you hug your family, your wife and your children. If your children are away, make sure they hear your voice today. Every day, our children, I don't care if they're teenagers, I don't care if they're in their 20s, they need to hear your voice every day. A father needs to be present every day, at least until our children are 30. So children, grandchildren, compliment your wife, hug your children, leave them notes, send them texts, send them emails, but make sure you talk to them every single day. Liquid sunshine. The smoke never stopped me from the forest fires. I never missed a single day. 4 straight days, 4 straight videos. Pouring rain the last 2 days didn't stop me. Liquid sunshine. It just comes down to one thing. You're either serious or you're not. I don't negotiate the process. The process here for me is the process, and I gotta do it. So rain and sickness and feelings and snow and heat, none of that stuff. It doesn't change a thing. I still got to get out there and put the work in. So do the work, and you don't have to kiss anybody's ass. Remember that story. 2 words that changed my life. Email millions.coach. 2 words that changed my life. 2 words that'll change your life. Be relentless.